Okay, how's it going? I'm doing well, I'm doing well. Ah, shit. I was doing better about 20 seconds ago. Anyway, I'm good. Good to see you here. I hope you didn't miss the stream earlier. That was the last of the Caro Core streams. I finished everything there just a little while ago, and now I'm just doing some practice runs. Oh, you missed it? Yeah. Well, the VOD is still up, so I'm sure you can take a look if you wanna check back and see what happened. My strategy right now is, as you can see, I'm in the beginning of Operation Snake Eater, trying to get past these guards here, and I think I have a pretty decent strategy. It takes a little... I'm practicing for getting the Foxhound rank, so this is just going to be kind of me messing around, trying to find the best strategies to get through the different areas and whatnot. And this area is not a... It's not a very easy one to get through, I'll be honest. It's not impossible, but it's a bit tricky. I missed. Nope, never mind. That works. I'm just kind of, yeah, labbing out strategies and ways of doing this right now. My plan here is I have to knock both of those guys out with a single... Ah, shit. You're not supposed to do that, bro. Doesn't matter. Ideally, he doesn't try to investigate those bodies, but it doesn't really matter regardless. This section is the one that I need the most practice with. My strategy here is a little different. I want to get past both of these guys. I actually have a decent way of doing it. It takes a little work, but... What I need to do here is I need to get the dude on the left to see me. Do I think social media ruined gaming, especially for short form content? I wouldn't say... I wouldn't disagree with that statement. I mean, ah, shit. Yeah, that's not what I meant to do. I mean, it is what I meant to do, but I didn't work out. I mean, how would you argue if like social media ruined gaming? Are you saying like you can just watch playthroughs of games and not play them, or are you saying that it expanded the community and made it less niche? Because I mean, I think that there's definitely arguments to be made for both of those, but I'm not entirely sure. If you have like a specific point you're trying to make, I'd love to know, because I'm not sure if I necessarily agree with the idea of social media like making gaming less interesting or ruining gaming. I wouldn't necessarily say so. Um, but I definitely think that yeah, there's an argument to be made that gaming used to be, I suppose, quite niche, and the community for it has expanded a lot. Um, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. I don't think that a bigger community is, like objectively bad, but there are certainly risks and problems that appear when you have a large community of pretty much anything, to be honest. Like, is he gonna see them? He might. I hope he doesn't. I could, yeah, I mean, I could see kind of both sides. I meant attention span. Okay, it ruined yours. Yeah, short form content. I don't. Ah, shit. Yeah, short form content in and of itself is just objectively, like, kind of ruinous for your attention span. But I would also argue that younger generations, I'm Gen Z, I feel like our generations have always had short attention spans. Like I don't know if there's any like studies or like I don't know if there's any studies or I suppose resources about this, but I want to say that our generation, or my generation I should say, is you know, somewhat more prone to ADHD or something of that nature, ADD, some kind of, attention disorder like that. I mean, again, I'm not entirely sure because I don't have any sources for that, but I would say a good chunk of our generation probably does have some kind of disorder of that nature. And not that there's anything wrong with having, a attention disorder. It's just kind of how it is. Tacit, how's it going? You're back. Can he? Why does he turn around so fast? Ha! Gotcha, you bastard. You're not getting me with that. I'm doing good, I'm doing good. Yeah, I finished the Karo Core stream, the finale there, just a minute ago, and now I'm doing some Foxhound rank practice. I can just run right past this guy, pretty sure. He's not gonna hear me, I don't think. Sweet. I really need to get this specific section down, so I'm probably gonna be running this one a lot. I'm just gonna keep reloading. That guard is a bit annoying sometimes because he keeps turning around at the worst possible time. But it's not really a big deal. I just gotta get the problem here is that I just have to have like there's a sweet spot where I think if you do get too close, the guard will just kind of automatically turn around. Um, and I can't get too close to any of these people when I'm doing the grenade trick, because that's not it seems different from just like having your footsteps completely silent. I suppose if I really wanted to, I could just use something like the spirit camo, which is kind of what I want to do. Like that's kind of my I'm gonna try that. I'm gonna put on the spirit camo and see what I can do here. Because if I can, and that would even help me. I just don't know like how effective that camo is in this section. Like it's nighttime. So I do certainly have, an advantage in that regard. See, plus 30, which is really good actually. Might as well put on the black face paint, why not? So let's see here. Oh shit. I don't think that worked. Unless... Ah. I got overzealous. The other thing that I would argue about attention spans and whatnot, I would say that it kind of depends on the person, in my opinion. I don't think it's necessarily like, oh, an entire generation had their, you know, attention spans ruined or something like that. I would say some people have more or less I guess just like a tendency to be more or less I don't want to say aware. Aware sounds bad, but just, yeah, but some people are just born to have better attention spans. Sometimes it's genetic, sometimes it's environmental. It's a lot to unpack in that regard, I would argue. So it's not necessarily easy to say, oh well, an entire generation got ruined because of short form content. I mean, you might not be completely wrong there, but let's see. Spirit. I love the spirit camo so much, it's not even funny. Perfect. Hopefully, this other guy won't see them. But dude, the camo here sucks. Like, what is up with that? Like, okay, when I'm just standing around, it's fine. When I was sitting in the other area, it was fine. That's annoying. Maybe it's because I'm in the leaves or something. So what? Huh. That's really odd. That he sometimes sees them and sometimes doesn't. I thought it was because, oh, they're covered up by the grass or something. I get the feeling that this might be a really, really bad camo to use here because the guys in the bridge area he might see me and like actually raise an alert instead of just like moving to investigate, which could be a big issue because the entire point of getting past these people. Shit. I went too far to the end. I should have just waited. Yeah, that was a little too. I have the strategy down. It just comes down to practice. The remake is gonna fix a lot. Yeah, I think it will. I'm interested to see, yeah, what kind of things they change, if they change any of like the balance decisions or whatever. I hope they make some good balance decisions and fix things a little nicely, a little more nicely. I was really impressed with the graphical fidelity of that game as well. I mean, that's kind of a minor thing, I will say. Like, you know, nobody plays the games for the graphics. But I mean, and I've see, and this might be a little bit weird, but I am kind of I'm in a weird camp where I'm excited for the remake, but I also kind of wish it never happened. You know, like I just kind of wish that they didn't try to change anything with Metal Gear. I just kind of wish that the series had been left alone. I don't think it needed I don't think it needed a remake per se, and I'm a little frustrated that they decided to, you know, remake MGS3. What kind of things are you concerned about? Because I'm interested to hear. My problem with the remake itself is just I feel like MGS3 did not need a remake. I feel like they needed to port it to modern consoles and do it well, which they didn't with the Master Collection. They should have just focused on making the Master Collection as good as it possibly could be. And then, okay, you know what? If you want to remake a game or two, like then go right ahead. But I feel like this just came at a bad time where they didn't need to change anything. They didn't need to remake the entire game, in my opinion. It was just not necessary. And that's not a... It's not something that I really realized until not that long ago. When I was like, you know what, maybe this remake is not all it's cracked up to be, you know? The animations look off, the gameplay feels like a cheap remake of a legendary. And I mean, what I will say is that it will be really hard to know until we get the game, obviously. But, wow. I think he might have just been turned. Yeah, I will say, like, the animations are something that I'm not particularly concerned about. Like, I would rather they have goofy looking animations that are true to the original than anything else. Honestly, I would. But I can understand you know, perspective of like, oh, well, this doesn't fit with the modernized game, which I can completely, you know, I can completely understand and see where that comes from. And that's what I'm saying. That's kind of why I was concerned, is I know that this remake is going to be divisive, you know, regardless of how well it's done. The thing, my whole thing about the remake is that with Delta, Konami is confronted with a problem here, and they're forced to choose between the lesser of two evils. Either they have to make the game better, and well, not better, but they have to make it more modern. Either they make MGS3 more modern, and the game is modernized and it fits well for the younger generation, and new fans are like, wow, this is epic and this is awesome, and this feels like, you know, a um really good mix between, you know, modern shooter games and this classic stealth action masterpiece. Or you have to um you or and you okay, so you either have to attract new people and make the game modern, and make new people, younger people, excited to play it and make it suit them, and alienate the older fans who are like, this doesn't feel like the game I loved. Or you do the opposite. You alienate the younger fans by making the game so extremely truthful to the original. And I would argue that doing the former is worse, which I don't necessarily think they're actually going to do that. I don't think they are inclined to make the game suitable for younger generations. It looks like they're doing their best to keep it as accurate as possible, and they might be doing that almost to a fault, which I would still argue is better than potentially making it too modern and screwing it over, you know? Um, and I feel so yeah, either you make the game really, really accessible and really nice for young people and new fans, or like what I'm saying is so many people want Delta to be MGS5 but Snake Eater colored, essentially. And I think that's the wrong perspective, and I think that's the wrong idea to have, because Snake Eater and the Phantom Pain are two different games from two completely different eras. You know, there are elements of them that are similar, but there are, you know, it's a problem though, is that you can't expect this game from 2015 to play the same as this remake of a game from 2004. You know, the original Snake Eater I'm playing on the HD collection, which is essentially, are they gonna raise it? Oh shit. Don't you think being too faithful to the original is not necessarily a good fit? I can see issues with both sides, but I will say, as a see, I got into Metal Gear not very long ago, like within the past 5 years. So I am somewhat of a new gen player. However, I I do like the Phantom Pain, but unlike a lot of people in this community, I don't think it's like the greatest thing ever. I honestly kind of prefer Snake Eater over the Phantom Pain, and I have a whole host of issues with the Phantom Pain that I'm not going to get into. But the problem is, yeah, I don't think that we should be trying to make a game that is just the Phantom Pain but Snake Eater cut coded or whatever. If we're gonna remake MGS3, we should make MGS3 but modernize it, but make it better, make it, I don't know. You know, it's hard to say. And this is the thing that's difficult is, you know, you said that you feel like Kojima's work feels like it's unremarkable. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what you're meaning there because the entire game is Kojima's work. Um, I also feel like Kojima's work feels like it's unremarkable. I mean, if you're saying that unremakeable, I see what you mean. Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say is that you're not going to get a modernized Snake Eater. You're not going to get a perfect remake if you don't have Kojima. You can take his source material and try to make it as no, it's you're good, bro. I know that it just, yeah, unremakeable is, interesting word, looks like unremarkable, but yeah, no, I get what you mean. I get what you mean. You can't remake it. I get it. Yeah, you can take his source material and you can try to make a game that is as close to the source material as possible while still being, somewhat modernized and making it feel better and suit a new audience. But without Kojima, it's not going to be. And I'm not trying to glaze the dude. Like, I have a ton of issues with Kojima, but what I will argue, what I will. Oh, shit. What I will argue. Yeah, that didn't work. What I will argue and what I will say is that, um, regardless of the issues that I have with him and his work, I still think that he's an excellent game designer, and I think that his touch in the remake will be missed. I think that we will find that the remake is I realistically I think that the remake is going to be good. I think it's going to be a quality product, but I also think it's not going to have the same flair, the same style. It is, in my opinion, I think it's going to feel kind of like a shell of its former self. Not as in it's going to feel empty or it's going to feel bad, but just that you're going to know that something's missing. And part of that is going to be for all of the old players out there. Part of the what's missing is the fact that this is just objectively not the same game that you played when you were a kid, you know? And you're going to miss out on the nostalgia and the joy and wonder of being a kid and playing this game for the first time and figuring everything out, you know? Um, but in addition, this game is also, without Kojima's direct influence, I think that there's a significant argument to be made that it's not going to have the same style, like I said, the same style, the same effect, the same flair as the original does. And that, in my opinion, is problematic. Um, is it necessarily a fair, is it fair that oh, because you're remaking this game, that, you know, I feel like you can argue this point even with a perfect remake like Resident Evil 2. Yeah, I mean, I've heard really good things about Resident Evil and the remake that they did with it. Um, and like I said, you know, I would argue that a remake is just never, it's in the name, you know, it's a remake. It's not the original. And sometimes that's not a problem. Sometimes remaking a game is a good thing because the game needs a remake, or it was just objectively not a quality product, or it's not accessible, or whatever. Maybe in some situations you can argue that, okay, yeah, a remake is a good idea here because of this, this, and the other. But with Snake Eater, I'm like, okay, they ported it onto modern platforms horribly. The ports that they made were bad. They didn't do a good job doing that. They didn't do a good job with the Master Collection. But I have I have basically never played a game with such gameplay in my life. You know, I grew up with Minecraft. I remember when that was the greatest thing ever. And I shouldn't have stood up there. I need him to catch sight of me, but yeah, like I was saying earlier, I don't think it needs a remake because, again, like, you know, it's already a very, very good game. It's from 2004, but it feels exceedingly smooth, and it works. And I think that, yeah, you don't need to remake a game that is already superb and sublime like this, you know? I am, you know, you know, it would be really, really nice if they were like, hey, we're gonna make a. I mean, they would never do this, but imagine if they were like, hey, we're gonna remaster the cutscenes and just make like a Metal Gear Solid 3 movie. That would be kind of cool. But that would never happen. I'd love. I'm really. It's really. What I'm trying to say with that is, I look at the screenshots, I look at the videos, I look at all that. I'm like, wow, this looks really, really good. This looks really, really nice. However, um, just because it looks pretty doesn't mean it's gonna, you know, be exactly. It's gonna be good and it's gonna be exactly what it needs to be. And the other thing is that, you know, in theory, they already kind of, you know, remastered this game and its cutscenes. There was a pachinko game that they made. He's gonna see these guys now, I think. Um, I don't know. I would just say that yeah, okay, new graphics are great, but why don't you just update the graphics and do nothing else? Like, I feel like, you know, trying to modernize everything like crazy, I don't know if that's a good idea. I wonder if there's a way for them to just sort of take the graphics, take the cutscenes. In an ideal world, in my ideal world, that's how this remake would work. Is you take the stuff that's not important, you take the graphics, and you just bump them up to 2025, you know, while keeping literally everything else the same. But again, that would be a pretty that is a 20-year difference, you know, between 2025 and 2004. It's 20 years, and so it's not going to be easy to take the graphics and make them better while keeping everything else the same. Like I'm saying, I really don't think this game needs a remake. I think that it is more than serviceable. Serviceable is like low-key insulting to how good this game is to play right now. I'm not trying to glaze super hard, but it's just like, why did we need to do this? And whatever the case is, though, what if, and only what if, Delta proves us wrong and we get a good remake? Would you want to see a remake of MGS1? I mean, and here's the thing. I'm not against remakes. I would love to see a remake of literally every single Metal Gear game ever. That would be epic to me. However, again, I don't think we need one. I don't think we need these games to be remade. I think that, again, they are perfect in the only game that I would argue kind of needs help is the Phantom Pain. And the reason that I say that is because the Phantom Pain is an unfinished game. None of these other games are flawed in the way that the Phantom Pain is. And I'm not trying to, jump on the hate train here, but that's just the way I see it. And that's just, every other game in the series is, in my opinion, very well made, very well produced. Even if I don't love the stories of every single game, I can still get behind them and say, hey, at least we have some kind of we have a chronology here. With the Phantom Pain, everything's out the window. Do you know how many things in the series that the Phantom Pain retconned and just completely invalidated? There's so many plot points. Even MGS3 retconned some stuff. In the original Metal Gear, I don't know if I should say this because it's kind of spoilers for those original Metal Gear games on the MSX, but those two games, you have Big Boss is the antagonist, and in the first game you fight him in Outer Heaven, and Outer Heaven explodes, but then he survives, and then in Metal Gear 2 he comes back, and he's got all kinds of cybernetic parts, and the thing is that in Metal Gear 1, he lost his eye due to the explosion of Outer Heaven, which happens at the end of Metal Gear 1. But then in this game, you see Big Boss, Naked Snake, getting his eye shot off in Groznygrad, which is a retcon. They changed it from being, oh, he lost his eye in Outer Heaven, to he lost his eye in Groznygrad. So if you go back and you play the original, if you play Metal Gear 2 now, it's not going to really make sense as to why he lost his eye, because in theory he should have always have lost his eye. You know what I mean? And it also doesn't make sense how apparently Venom is a body double, and that's the Big Boss that you fight in Metal Gear 1, even though Big Boss in Metal Gear 1 has literally none of the cybernetic parts or, physical disfigurements that Venom Snake has. If anything, it would have made more sense for Venom Snake to be the Big Boss that you fight in Metal Gear 2, because at least in Metal Gear 2, Big Boss had a bunch of, robotic arms and shit. So that would have kind of made sense. You could have been like, oh, well, he had this robot arm, and yeah, like, that was in Metal Gear 2, and then you can kind of go back and be like, okay, so he got his first one in 5. That doesn't, like, retcon anything necessarily. But yeah, all of that is to say, I am not against remakes at all. Yeah, like I said, there are certain games where it's like, yeah, a remake is a really good idea right now. Like, this game kind of needs help. However, Metal Gear is not one of those games. It's just not. And in my opinion, the decision to try and remake a game like MGS3, especially for modern platforms, is and for the modern eye, the younger generation, because that is kind of who this is targeting. The Metal Gear fan base, love it or hate it, is dying because there are lots of people who have played this game for years and years and years, and people are getting old now. A lot of my best friends who introduced me to this series and who got me, invested in the lore and all of that, they're at least 10 years older than me, you know? And I'm almost 20. I'm going to be 20 next year. So I think that kind of goes to show that, yeah, the Metal Gear fandom is losing a lot of people. So it's only natural that you'd want to, you know, reinvigorate the fan base. But I don't know that remaking MGS3, and again, because MGS3 is so good, I'm like, you know what you should really do is you should fix the Phantom Pain. Give us a director's cut of the Phantom Pain. Go back to Kojima with your hats in your hands and tears in your eyes. Go back to him and say, oh, well, go back to him and say, can you do a director's cut of the Phantom Pain? Because that's the game that, needs the help. And if we're talking about, needs a remake or doesn't, that's it. Like, I don't know what else to say. Where can you acquire 3 billion easy bake ovens? Not entirely sure. MGS1 remake seems a little weird since it can't be made that much better, and if it was remade, people wouldn't like it because every time someone remakes the first in the series, everyone hates it. I mean, and that's without even mentioning the Twin Snakes for the GameCube. And I've heard that remake was actually quite good. I mean, it ruined the balance of the game. That's another thing to consider. What if they pull a Twin Snakes? What if they ruin the balance of MGS3? What if the game is now way too easy? There's no crosshair in this game. When I pull out my grenade, I have to just look. I just gotta eyeball it. Like, I can't, and you can control. I can't actually control how far I throw the grenade because I'm not using the right controller for it. Yeah, Twin Snakes is good. Yeah, I definitely think that there's a risk of them, I just don't want Konami to mess with Metal Gears, is essentially what I'm saying. And that sounds kind of like stupid and heartless and like backwards, but I'm like, I don't think that they said they would balance Delta. Well, I sure hope so. I'm not saying I don't believe them. I'm just saying, like, there's risks here, is all I'm trying to say. I don't know. I just find that Metal Gear is a series that has so much depth and there's a lot that goes into it. And I just feel like the idea of remaking something this legendary is only it's either going to be a complete success or a complete failure. And it's much more likely that it would be a failure. I'm not trying to sound like I don't want Metal Gear to be accessible for newer generations, but I'm also like, it should be accessible, but not in the way that Konami's thinking it should be. Konami should not, and this is also a money grab. Consider that as well. And this is something that a lot of people don't really notice and realize is that while we're debating, oh, is this going to be good? Is this going to be bad? Is it going to be faithful? Is it going to be modern? All the while we're doing that, everybody's going to play it and try and find out. And that's $60, $70 in Konami's pocket. And so they know that no matter what they do with MGS3, people are going to play it. They could absolutely shit the bed with it, and people are still going to play it because it's MGS3. And people are going to play it, and they're going to be like, oh man, they shit the bed. This is awful. and they're going to refund it, but they're still going to get some people are not going to refund it. Some people are not going to be able to refund it. And then Konami's going to end up with a profit no matter what they do. So, Konami's going the hard way. They should go with a remake. If that's good, then maybe MGS6. I don't know. I disagree. I don't think, and I'm not, again, and this might be something that's hard for people to understand, and I'm not trying to sound like presumptuous or arrogant or, I'm not trying to be condescending. I'm really not. But the perspective I have with Metal Gear is that this is a legendary franchise. This is a legendary series that innovated in so many ways and did so much good for the world of gaming. And it has an extremely loyal fan base. It has a lot of great features. And the evolution of Metal Gear is, in my opinion, one of the most amazing. It's one of the most impressive. How do I say this? It's so impressive to see how the series evolved. It's so impressive to go back and play the first ever Metal Gear game. I mean, I started with MGS1, but what if I went back to all the way to Metal Gear 1 on the MSX? What if I played that game? And then what if I had started there and then played through every single other Metal Gear game? Like, how I feel like my perspective on this would be even crazier, because I'd be like, wow, like, it went from being a 2D side-scrolling MSX game, or, a 2D MSX game, to being a, triple A, extremely, high budget franchise kind of thing. All I'm saying is I don't think that Metal Gear should be revived. I'm of the opinion that this game should be remembered for what it is and for what it was, not for what it could be. People are always going to ask that about games. People are always going to be like, "Oh, but this series was so good. I wonder, like, what could they do with it that would be even better? Like, how could they make this game even better? How could they make this series even better?" People are always going to ask that, but that's not necessarily a question that needs to be answered. You don't always need to explore every opportunity. Sometimes sometimes you should just play a game and be like, wow, this is a really good game. I really like it, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. And leave it at that. And say, I don't think I need more. I don't think this, and this is something that is, this sort of hunger for more is not a bad perspective to have. It's not wrong to want more, but I think it's dangerous. I think it's risky, because if people constantly want more, you do run the risk, in my opinion, of, leading to a lot of problems and trying to go after the wrong things. Now, okay, I've been yapping a lot. I need to read the chat. Delta won't be bad, but I think it would be great. But I don't think it'll be great. If they tried to make MGS6, they would try to get Kojima's team to make MGS6 with a little help from Konami. First MGS game I played was MGS5. I was screwing around with the open world on my dad's file. MGS Delta isn't entirely all about MGS Revival, but it's also about stealth action revival. I can see that. Another thing to consider is that Kojima Productions they are making, as far as I know, another stealth game, and maybe some of you have heard of that. And what I'll say here, and I'm not trying to be mean, but the people that start with MGS5 is a great game. It's a great game, but it's not the best in the series, and it's difficult for people to play MGS5 and then go back in time and find the same, I guess, because yes, MGS5 is a great game, and people are going to play MGS5 and be like, oh my god, this game is so good, it's so fun, it's so clean, it's so smooth, it's so polished, everything's great. And then you go back, and it's hard to look at the games of the past and see how, for their times, they were revolutionary, and see how they themselves, even all these years later, are still excellent. That was my perspective. I started with the old games. I started playing the old games first, and I played through, I watched the series evolve, and I was like, wow, these are really, really fun. This is really good. And I got to MGS5, and I was like, this is a great game, but I played it for 20 minutes. The first one I fully played was Peace Walker. Okay, fair enough. Peace Walkers is not a bad entry to start with. I mean, I think it's a little awkward to it's a little awkward as the first place to start in terms of chronology or whatever. But all I'm saying is that whenever somebody asks, "Oh, how should I get into Metal Gear? How should I play it?" I say, start with number one and go forward. If nothing else, start with one and go forward. Um, and the reason that I say that, when I first played MGS5 was on the PS3 at 20 FPS and bad graphics. Oh yeah, that PS3 version of MGS5 is pretty rough. Um, but all I'm trying to say here is when you start at the beginning, when you start at the start and you see where everything goes, you watch things evolve. In my opinion, that gives you a better um it gives you a better appreciation for what the series was and for how revolutionary it was for the time. Because I remember when I played MGS1 for the first time, I was amazed. I was honestly shocked because I was like, this game plays so much like a modern game. And it's from 1998. I was amazed. Honestly, I was. But then some people will play MGS5 and they'll experience that, they'll get used to that. They'll think this is what Metal Gear is. And then they go back and they play they play the earlier games, they play MGS1 and they can't do it. They don't have either they can't play it or it's uncomfortable or they just never play it. And the reason why is because that is not, I hate to say it, but MGS5 is not Metal Gear. It's an open world stealth action game, but it's, in my opinion, not Metal Gear. And that may sound like a weird statement to make. That may sound like, what do you mean it's not Metal Gear? When I say it's not Metal Gear, it was such a massive departure from the rest of the series that, yes, it's the same universe, same characters, basically all of the same stuff. However, what you're missing here is the fact that this is not the way the series has always been. And the way the series has been linear, story-based, brutal and unforgiving survival stealth. I mean, at least that's kind of how I would describe MGS3. Not Metal Gear, but if there was an MGS6, it would be more accepted. If they made an MGS6 that was like 1 through 4, I would have no problem with it. That was structured like 1 through 4. But this is the problem. Is that Metal Gear just does not translate into the modern age. And I think that this is something that, again, like I was saying earlier, like MGS5, in my opinion, doesn't really feel like Metal Gear because it's so different. Not saying it's bad, it's different. And I think that it does kind of, betray isn't really the right word, but it doesn't fit with the way the series started. The times, yeah, real. Um, there's just so much of MGS5 that is Metal Gear, but it isn't. In a way, the Phantom Pain is almost kind of like its own. It almost kind of describes itself via its story. It's a phantom of its former self. It's a phantom of what the game was. It's a phantom of what the series was initially. And now it's hard for us to look at 5 and say this is Metal Gear. And it's hard for us to look at the rest of the series and say that's Metal Gear, because this is all I'm saying. If it, and to be honest, my perspective isn't even correct. I'm not the end all be all here. It would go into the modern age if it wasn't called MGS6. It needs to be a new game within the universe with same characters. Possibly. Possibly. I mean, again, I still hold my opinion that Metal Gear does not need remakes. It does not need. This is what I'm saying. I just think Metal Gear needs to be appreciated for what it is. I guess that's kind of my opinion. So when everybody talks about remakes and remasters and MGS6 and all this kind of stuff, to me, I don't think that's necessary because I think the series is great on its own. And I think that, yeah, going back and playing 20-year-old games is going to be wacky. It's going to be an odd experience. But I'm Gen Z. I grew up with video games for the most part. I remember playing, I remember it is difficult for the new generation of gamers to understand this, but it's important to look at what you have and work with that and appreciate what you have as well. Appreciate that and, you know, realize that not everything is going to translate into a modern game. Into a. It's not always going to work like that, is the problem. And I'm not trying to sound condescending. I'm not trying to, be on a high horse here. I'm not trying to sound like an authority figure. Or I probably sound like a freaking old head right now, but it's just that the way I see it, Metal Gear is an excellent series, even though it is 20 years old. To me, Metal Gear is like wine. It just gets better with age. I honestly, that's corny, but I think it's true. I really do think it's true because I've never played a series that is still so clean and so relevant to this very day. To me, that's not something that I've ever experienced before. Like, pretty much every game I've ever played, I've had, fun with it, and then I've been like, okay, I want to do something else now. You know what I mean? I've had times where I've been like, okay, this is fun, now I'm going to go do something else. I keep coming back to Metal Gear, and the reason why is because even though it is so old, it's quality. And I don't trust Konami to take Metal Gear. In my opinion, MGS5 was not a quality product. There were elements of it that were really fun, that were really great. There's only so much MGS in about 5 years it will be dead, and the old players won't have much to do. And you know what? In my opinion, I'm okay with that. Because here's the thing. The old players, by the time, unless Delta goes good, yeah, I mean, if there's, yeah, I feel like there is enough to do in these games that, look at all of the different rankings that you can achieve in the different games. Look at all of the different ways you can play, even with its linear nature. I would almost argue that MGS3 is a more flexible game in terms of playstyle than MGS5, even though MGS5 is open world and you have so many other things at your disposal. The reason that I say that is because MGS5 is built around a certain. It wants you to play the game a certain way, but it doesn't punish you if you don't. Or I should say, it wants you to play the game a certain way, and it punishes you if you don't. However, it's not necessarily the punishment. It's not equal. Getting spotted and engaging in combat. In MGS5, it's like, yeah, that's part of the game. That is something that is encouraged in MGS5 because they want it. Unless you're DSP, yeah. They wanted in MGS5, they wanted a game that was going to compete with the, can I that was really sloppy. I should not have done that. But yeah, in my opinion, I really don't think that Metal Gear needs any kind of tweaking or any kind of redoing or remastering because like I said, I think that it's excellent the way it is. And you know, look at games like look at Mario, dude. Here's a good example. Look at Mario. Is that a game about stomping Goombas and saving Princess Peach anymore? No. It's about riding go-karts around, around space arenas and it's a completely different game now. It's a completely different series. And if you look at Super Mario Bros, it's like it's so different from the original. Yeah, they're keeping the same kind of thing alive. Yeah, MGS5 wants flexibility, but the game isn't as open with players who don't stealth everything. I would disagree. I would say that MGS5 is much more suited to people being loud, brazen, COD players who just want to blast everything in sight. It's so easy to do that and not get spotted in MGS5. Like it's crazy. This, MGS3 is a harsh game. It's stricter in my opinion. It's not as easy. The easiest difficulty in MGS3 is I would argue more difficult than the extreme versions of MGS5. And maybe that's a hard thing to say because they are two completely different games. You need to stealth everything to have good points. Well, sure. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily disagree that stealth is obviously a big part of the game and it is a integral part of the game. But the issue that the point that I'm trying to make here is that it's not like if you get spotted in MGS 2 or 3 or 4, you die. Okay, so yeah, I don't know. It's really hard for me to kind of MGS4 is more about an all-out war. Some places you can get caught and still win easy. Some MGS4 is the most flexible. I can kind of see where you're coming from, but I would also argue that I mean, especially if I've always found MGS4 to be really really difficult when you get spotted. Like the just guards do so much damage, enemies do tons of damage to you in MGS4. So I don't know. I don't know. Yeah, I think that MGS5 wanted flexibility, but they didn't know how to do it right, and they ended up, they couldn't find the balance, and the game is now in a way sort of too easy. It's absurdly easy when you do stealth, and it's still really easy when you go full combat on everything. And you can disagree, but in my experience, that's what I've found in my experience with MGS5 is it's the game doing stealth is like a joke. Like getting through learning how to do things in MGS5 is difficult for sure. Learning the best strategies, learning the best this, that, and the other. That's not what I'm saying is easy. What I'm saying is once you master stealth in MGS5, the game's a joke. It's so easy. Um, And every but and in addition to that, once you if you develop all kinds of really good weapons, and if you go anywhere and you have rocket launchers and grenade launchers and explosives, it's also a joke. You all you got to do, you can get the lowest grade battle dress and grab, some explosive weapons or some assault rifles or some machine guns or whatever. You can grab whatever you want. The open world is made for stealth, but it isn't made for guns blazing. The areas just aren't made. I disagree. I think it's the other way around. I think that MGS5 was made primarily for combat. I think it was made primarily for, because look at how open everything is. That makes stealth way too easy. Now you can see your enemies from miles away. You can snipe them from so far away. You have so many options when it comes to stealth because the game is so open. It gives you those options, but it's not intended for stealth. I'm not saying the game isn't intended for stealth, but as an open world and stealth, in my opinion, don't mix. Um, I mean, in a way, I do sort of, in a way, almost disagree with my own statement there, because then I look at Ground Zeroes and I think Ground Zeroes is excellent. The outposts are for heavy combat, but bases you can go guns blazing and it feels too off. I mean, if you're talking about like OKB0 being more of a stealth centric base, I would agree. And the reason that it feels that way is because, let me tell you, it's trying to recapture the same vibe as the areas in these games. In a way, OKB0 and MGS5 is just like Groznygrad. You're funneled into different places with specific guards stationed in specific places, and you need to sneak past those guards in order to get to your objective. And that's not something that you can necessarily do in the other areas of MGS5. In the other areas of MGS5, you can just shoot people in the face no matter what, and you can get past them. Or you have so much open space that you can just walk between people. Imagine if MGS3 was like that. Imagine if I could just walk past those two guards that I'm trying to get past. The game doesn't have enough interactive elements. No swimming, no tall grass. Enemies are all in the center of the base, so you can go. Exactly. Exactly. It's not it's not necessarily designed for stealth. It's MGS5 is an easy game, and it's designed to appeal to a younger generation, and it does. And that's not bad. It's not bad that it tries to appeal to a younger generation. But what I'm saying is that because it does that, it loses some of its identity as a Metal Gear game. So, yeah. All I'm saying, I guess, if the gist of my opinion here is, I'm just an old Metal Gear elitist. I just think that the old games are the best, and I don't think that they should really try to change anything with them, because, I just don't feel that it's necessary. Um, I'm sure that there's some areas where I could, you know, yeah, there are definitely facets of the game. Like, I don't really play MGS1 anymore, right? I don't play it. Even though it's a really good game, I don't play it anymore because it is so dated. And that game has, in a way, gotten overshadowed by 2 and 3 and every other game. But I'm still glad that I played it and experienced it, because if I had played 5 first, I would have never played 1, you know? Um, so yeah, I guess I'm just an old Metal Gear elitist. I think that they're the best, and I don't really want to. I'm just concerned that Konami is not gonna make the right decisions going forward, and I wish that the community, and I'm not trying to be condescending or rude, but I wish that the younger generation was more, I guess, agreeable, or more willing to try the old games, like Broccoli. You know, like, you won't know if you don't like it until you try it. Anyway, I actually have something to take care of. This was a bit of a short stream, but I was able to hone my skills a little bit here, which I think was good. I had some really interesting conversations. Appreciate all the people stopping by. I'm probably gonna keep doing some streams of MGS3. I'm probably gonna keep doing this again. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe later on. It's not going anywhere. So stay tuned for the next one, and I'll see everybody later.